Thank you.
Thank you. The hearings panel report to the council on the High Street Revitalisation and Tram extension project. The chair of the hearings panel isn't here, so Mike, could I invite you to, David, to introduce the report? Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you. The hearings panel met and it was a majority decision that we have before you today. We had 4 options to consider. Option 1 was full revitalisation of High Street and the tram extension. Option 2 was just do the tram extension and asset repairs. Option 1A was the revitalisation of the 2 northern blocks of High Street and with full revitalisation of the southern block with some additional parking. Option 1B was revitalisation of the 2 northern blocks and do minimal in the southern block of High Street. We have recommended that option 1 for the mid and northern sections of High Street be adopted, and 1B, which was do minimum excuse me, in the southern block. It's interesting to note that the tram extension itself had overwhelming support, with 81% of submitters indicating their support for that part of the project. The controversial aspect of the whole revitalisation program was around the provision of on-street parking, where 23 submitters wanted less emphasis on parking and 25 wanted more parking spaces to support local businesses. In particular, 19 opposed reduction of car parking in the southern block. The committee, the hearings panel I should say, heard a significant number of submissions from developers expressing their concern about the reduction of parking, and that in itself influenced the majority of the panel to, at this stage, not proceed with work in the southern area. So in summary, I'll just backtrack a little. We now have an interesting scenario where the middle block parking attracted a fair amount of consideration from a developer, and staff are proposing a minor change to the hearings panel report, converting 2 loading zone area parks to car parking, and adding 2 additional car parking through the design and just tweaking some of the blockouts in the road. So that gives an additional overall addition of 2 parks over and above what was there in the loading zone. In the southern block, staff are recommending that we consider reprogramming the works to align with the building of the multi-use arena, as opposed to the hearings panel do nothing at present. That poses an interesting scenario, I suppose, in that we have a hearings panel recommendation, and whether council would consider normal practice, a hearings panel decision comes to council and it's either accepted or sent back to the hearings panel. I believe there are some issues around if it's sent back to a hearings panel and pending an election. If the same hearings panel is not available, it may require constituting a new panel and possibility of starting the consultation again. Unusual circumstances. As a panel member. I'm comfortable with the changes that staff are recommending, but technically we shouldn't be amending a hearings panel resolution, so I'm not quite sure how that may be overcome, or if it's indeed possible.
Yeah, I mean, that's a challenging issue, and perhaps if staff could come to the end of the table. It did occur to me that there was potential, rather than requesting staff, that is, and I've got the alternative recommendations to go up, but you raise a really good point, which is that we're in a sort of kind of the interregnum position, and because it's gone to a hearings panel, I think the last thing that we want to do is refer it back to a hearings panel, because it will start the process again. So it seems to me that there is one thing that we could do, because the recommendation from the hearings panel around the southern block is essentially a do nothing in the southern block, isn't it? That's the recommendation that's in front of us. So we could just simply note that staff, as part of the 2021-2031 long-term plan program, will bring back proposals to program the upgrade of the southern block of High Street to align with the construction of the mould. So we'll just note the fact that that's something that will happen as part of the LTP process. So it's not necessary for us to request that you do it. We just note that you do it, and then it's resolved in accordance with the resolution of the hearings panel, and I think that will resolve that. And then in the after the election, if the new council picks that up as an issue and inserts that in the process for the LTP, then it's all good to go. In terms of the mid-block concerns, I know that staff have worked very hard to look at the sort of what is inevitably going to be a transitional arrangement, and I know that I'm very supportive of simply providing for 2 additional car parks in that middle block. In the meantime, it just seems to me to be a relatively sensible one to propose, and I'm just wondering how within the context of the decision that we have from the hearings panel, we can do that in a way that sort of kind of facilitates getting to an outcome today. So if
Sorry, apologise.
Yep.
Through the chair, it was deemed minor. The other thing is that the detailed traffic resolutions coming back.
So
the detailed traffic resolutions are reported back to the relevant committee. So through the detailed design process, make consideration for, and they'd get resolved as part of the detailed traffic resolutions to come back.
This isn't going to happen anytime soon, is it? So, but the most important thing is that this approves the tram, and this is the issue that comes back.
Yeah.
So do we need to?
Do you note the request too? And we can consider that through detailed design to be resolved through the detailed traffic resolution.
Okay, and then in here request.
Staff
so instead
provide.
of request that, note that staff will look to provide 2 additional car parks as part of the detailed design to be reported back.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
So what I'm trying to do is to pick up on your point, David, that the challenge that we're faced with is a hearings panel report. We do not want to send it back to the hearings panel. I know that not everyone will be necessarily happy with it. I noted it was a split recommendation in terms of the hearings panel itself, but I think that in terms of getting a resolution that enables the key issues to come back to council in a format that doesn't require a reference back to the hearings panel, I'm really good with that. So and you're comfortable with with the approach. Okay, good. So, David, would you like to move it? And is there a seconder for that? Well, I'll second it as an approach. So, are there any questions for staff?
Is that replacing 1B or an addition? So we're keeping that and then
No,
also noting.
put 1B first,
Yeah.
and then go noting
Note
that
that,
staff. Yep. Right. Aaron?
I had two. I'll go with the really simple one first. The wood for the trees to be removed. What's the location that sculpture will go to?
I don't think that's been decided yet. It's not actually ours. I believe it belongs to Scape, so we're returning it to them.
Okay. And was it considered where in that map on page 364 of ours, or 26 of the report, that it went across on the diagonal where it says potential location of future cultural artwork?
So my understanding of that artwork is that it needs some more work done to it to make it safe. It was never intended for a full-time installation. The cultural artwork is something we're working through with Matapopere at the moment. I can feed that back to the project team as well.
Yeah, I know it's been a very popular artwork. And then the other one is, in most of our reports we have financial implications. There's obviously budget in here. One that's not considered is the cost to the council every time we remove a metered car park. Why do we not put that in our reports if each car park is a loss of somewhere between, depending on where it is in the city, $4,000 and $9,000 a year? I mean, that's a direct cost to ratepayers.
We haven't typically. We've reported the loss, the change in car park, and we haven't typically reported that loss of revenue. But
that won't be a net figure, because there is a cost of enforcement, that compliance, that is not netted off in any of the considerations around car parking.
Absolutely, but as a financial implication to the council, when we remove a metered car park, it's a rented space that makes us money. Yes, there's cost like there is with any rented space, but we make revenue from it. So it has an implication. Like if we took the whole lot out across the whole city.
I think the incoming council has to ask for a detailed analysis of the net cost, because the compliance cost, and this has kind of been a little bit of my frustration, is that we don't focus on the net cost. So the compliance cost, if we could have a better system that was more sort of electronically connected, you wouldn't need to have people essentially from a compliance point of view out on the streets in the way that they are. So the net cost is quite different from the actual input. But we do need to do that work, and I thank you for raising it. It's a good point. Yanni.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the work you've done on this. I just wanted to check who we talked to in the fire service, and if we have anything in writing confirming that they don't have any concerns with this design.
So we talked to all emergency services, and we sat down around a table with the plans and had a meeting with them, and they said at that meeting that I was at, they didn't have any concerns with the design.
I look at some of these designs and I think of fire trucks trying to access in an emergency, and it just seems very hard to access based on the turning width that they would require. So we have nothing in writing, but we just had a meeting with emergency services who said they have no concerns.
So the fire service vehicles are tracked to make sure they can access these sites, so I can guarantee they can turn into these roads. They're not going to be there frequently, if at all. So sometimes it's not the easiest movement for them, because if we make it so a fire truck can turn in there at, say, 30 kilometres an hour, it means that cars will be able to turn in there every day, all through the day at 50 or higher. So it is a difficult movement for the fire service, but it's not going to slow them down significantly. You're talking a few seconds delay at the intersection to turn into High Street.
And they will turn across multiple lanes to get in, as they have a right to do. So we have discussed it with all emergency services around the table, as well as asking for their written feedback. I can't tell you hand on heart today whether we absolutely got written feedback from them. We think we did.
I wonder if we're talking to the right people in the fire service.
We are talking to the fire service, and we are talking to their representatives. So we have talked to the fire service and said, who is your representative to come and talk to this? We've talked to the area commander and they've put their representative up, and that's not for us to determine who their representative is. They've put them forward, and it is the same person on at every time. So we do have a consistent representative, which we're trying to work with.
I can't imagine that intersection is very easy to navigate now.
No.
Right. And the second question is just to understand the financial implications around this. So I was just trying to find, I didn't see it.
Section 10?
Right, section 10. So
it's page
Right.
14 of my 352.
352. Okay, it's just because it's not in a hearings report. So 352. Cool. Okay. So basically, with all the changes from the hearings panel and where they've got to, what's the total quantum of money that we're being asked to approve today?
You're being asked to approve options 1 and 1B, which is the third column along.
Right. So 8 million basically. Right. And how much money has NZTA committed as part of that?
At the moment, NZTA has not committed. They have said funding for this is unlikely in this NLTP.
And
so
how
depending
long?
on when the building starts, as to whether we're likely to be eligible for subsidy.
So if we wanted to get it into the next NLTP, so we wanted to get NZTA subsidy, given that this is an accessible transport project which they put in place, what would be the likely time frame for knowing whether or not that was funded in the new NLTP?
We'll be working with them over the next 12 to 18 months to try and figure that out.
Right.
So the next NLTP is in line with the next LTP, so we will know by then.
Okay, and just finally on the financials, so if we adopt 1 and 1B, then how does 1A get funded?
1A doesn't. It gets funded. 1A doesn't. We are adopting through this report 1 and 1B. That's the proposal for the hearings panel. 1A is put, the upgrade of the southern section is proposed to be noted as part of the next LTP to line up with the...
But sorry, there's no fund, like we've currently got funding in for 1A, 1B and 1, where we're only doing 1 and 1B with that funding, so we don't have any funding, as I would understand it, in our LTP for...
No, it needs to be planned as part of the next LTP.
So it's extra money that we need to find. It's not money that's sitting in a budget for the whole project cost to cover this.
I'm sorry, Councillor.
Sorry, we have a...
It actually doesn't make sense, Yanni.
Right, that's what I'm trying to understand. So we've got a project budget for High Street that would do the full revitalisation of High Street and the tram extension. That's about $9 million.
Yeah, the tram extension is already on budget, and we know that that's not funded by NZTA.
Yeah, no, I understand that. So we've got, basically in simple terms, we've got $9 million for the High Street for this length of the project. We're recommending to spend $8 million for 2/3 of the project with no money attached to the
So
stage
the
that we're
remaining
not
1 million would not be spent and would be aimed to be reprogrammed into another project that would be the southern section to upgrade that section.
Yeah, but that cost, would that cover the entire cost of what we would do there for that third stage?
I don't know at this stage, Councillor. It would be it is slightly more expensive to do it separately because you would have additional construction costs around mobilisation and demobilisation, but massively.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Mike, question?
Thank you. So High Street was a street, I guess, designated as a street for people?
Yes, it was.
Excellent. And in, I guess, the diagrams of what that looked like, it actually had no provision of on-street car parking in the Christchurch Central Recovery Plan.
I didn't bring it with me. My apologies.
Well, I've got it in front of me and it doesn't have any car parking in. So actually the fact that when it went out for consultation, let's look at the mid-block, actually all the blocks, they all had car parking on. Shows that it all really went out with, I guess, a compromised design to actually meet the needs of everyone that used the streets, including the businesses as well.
The balance, yes, we were trying to balance the needs of all of the people in the area.
Thank you. So therefore, obviously all this information went through the hearings panel, and from that we made a recommendation to recommend approving the mid-block from what... but feedback from one person has created a change to that following that recommendation?
Feedback was received from one person, yes, and we were asked to go and talk to them, so yes, okay. And we did.
And
we
and
came
that
back
person
and said,
obviously he owns property?
Yes.
And was those properties purchased before or after these plans?
I can't tell you that.
Central Recovery Plan was put out?
I can't tell you that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I don't know, sorry. That's not, I'm not being, I don't know.
Okay. So one of the things that obviously gets also pushed around a lot is the lack of car parking. Do you know how, because obviously we are including car parking on High Street, it's not been completely removed, there is a number of car parks, yep. And the whole point of High Street was actually to make it a street for people. There are no cycleways actually on High Street, there are cycle lanes.
Yes,
right.
Yeah, there's no separated cycleways.
Yeah. So in terms of car parking, do you know the numbers of car parking within, I guess, 200 metres of High Street?
So Billy's done some work, and so he'll talk to it.
Yeah, so in the middle block there are, well, from the middle 200 metre radius from the middle block, so between Litchfield and Chewham Street, there are 213 on-street car parks. And there's also, we estimate 560 off-street car parks. I say we estimate because we don't know exactly how many are leased in the parking buildings, and that includes the Crossing car park and the Salt District car park as well. So from the lower block, there are 233 on-street car parks within 200 metres, and there are 140 off-street car parks, because it's got a lot less in that lower block because it's not within 200 metres of the Crossing car park.
Okay, good, thank you. Aaron?
In all of the work that's been done over the years to bring people back to the inner city and to reuse and re-engage with the inner city, what were the survey numbers of people that wanted to use on-street parking versus parking buildings? Because I know post-quake there's a number of people who have fears of parking buildings.
I don't...
Has that ever been surveyed that you know?
I don't know, I'm sorry. It's sort of been a broader issue around the central city. I'm sorry, I can't answer that one today. I don't know.
Okay, thank you.
Mike?
Thank you. Just another one I'm sort of thinking of. Hopefully you've got the numbers. There's a number of streets around the city that actually have no parking at all, and actually are really, really successful, like New Regent Street. Do we know, I guess, how much on-street parking is within 200 metres of New Regent Street?
No.
I don't know off the top of my head, sorry. There's no car parking building. Yeah, there's a lot of gravel car parks near New Regent Street though, so there'd be quite a bit of parking.
All right, I'll open it up for debate. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any debate? Sarah?
I mean, you know, it's been through a hearings panel process and there's been a majority recommendation, and I'm, I guess, reluctantly probably likely to go with it today. But perception is not reality, and it staggers me that developers have rejected what could have been a really lovely, people-friendly upgrade. I mean, by their assertions about car parking, it would seem that key shopping areas like New Regent Street, Cashel Mall, High Street Mall and Oxford Terrace would all be, in complete jeopardy because there's no on-street parking. But they're not. People-friendly areas draw people to them. They're destinations in themselves. And when an area is people-friendly, people shop more. It's nicer to cross the road, it's nicer just to wander around, have a coffee. That's why malls are successful. Malls is just a closed street with a roof over it with no parking outside the shops. That's all they are, and that's how they started. You go to a mall, you drive around the car park for a wee while looking for a park, and then you walk 200 metres to the shop you want to go to. And that's just like town. Perception is not reality. Car parking is not the be-all and end-all. There's endless research and there's evidence in Christchurch that that's the case.
Anyone else? You've moved it, haven't you? So I just want to say a couple of words before. Look, I've supported this resolution today. I think that we have to remember that we're still in a post-disaster environment, and it does mean that it's going to take some time before we ultimately get to the state that we may well be in, even sooner rather than later. But I don't want to enforce sooner when it's going to stand in the way of development. People who own buildings in this part of High Street, they should be applauded for the work that they're doing. I know that one of the developers, he was the first mover. I went to the opening of the building on the corner of High Street and Litchfield, and it was such a boost to the central city just to see it underway, and wonderful little bars and little laneways and an environment that actually encouraged people to come to the city as the destination. I love what the businesses are doing there. The Salt District, St Asaph, Litchfield, Chewham, Salt. This wasn't a council-inspired concept. It's what the businesses created themselves, and it's an enormous destination. It wasn't in the Central City Recovery Plan. Nobody knew that actually when the private sector are absolutely facilitated to do their own thing, they can do wondrous things. Their motivation is not only profit, but actually they're creating an environment that encourages people to come into the central city. I just want to back them 100%. If that means delaying for a little period of time those things that the Central City Recovery Plan may have had as an objective, I just think that we've lost sight of the need for transitions that actually smooth the way for those developments in the future. So I'm supporting this. I think it's a good outcome. It enables staff to continue to talk to these amazing people who are actually making a real difference to our city, and we should be honouring them. Yanni, Glenn and Aaron.
Thank you. Yeah, we do have a few financial challenges. And I personally think that to go ahead with this project without NZTA contributing is not the right approach. Remember, the government is the one that forced Accessible City on us, and I think they have a responsibility to jointly fund what they've effectively made us do. I also do have a little bit of concern about the design, and although I appreciate we have talked to emergency services, I still struggle. If you look at what's happening on St Asaph Street, for example, and the heavy vehicles using these streets, it does create a lot of conflict. So it's probably something that you've all heard me say before, but I do think one of the problems in our city is that we are over-designing our streets to try and compromise on every type of activity down that street and end up not getting a really good outcome for anyone. And unfortunately, that's continues to be my view for this. Given our financial situation, I think we should leave it on the table. We should wait to get confirmed NZTA funding. We've just heard from a previous debate that we've got streets that we need to renew in neighbourhoods that are currently struggling. $9 million on this project now seems like a luxury that we can least afford when we've got other things that are greater priority, in my view, like fixing our broken infrastructure in our suburbs. So I won't be supporting this today.
Thank you. Well, being a City Councillor today and living with the tension of being a ward and City Councillor, I respectfully disagree with previous speaker, Councillor Yanni, given the fact that Pardon? What's that? Of course I support suburban revival with our roads, but we also have to support revival of our central city, This is a big area. This transcends 3 blocks. High Street, along with Victoria, are very significant roads in our city because they cut across that grid pattern. They're very distinctive features, which is what gives Christchurch part of it. It's one of its points of difference. I think today we actually need to push the go button and not sit on it. There are many things that kind of were around and touch on with this. We know about the tram extension. We know about the future provision and planning with the multi-use arena. People wanted more pedestrian access, something that was safe and green, which is picked up in the report with landscape and paving. We know there's been contention. We've seen it in the hearings panel. That's not unusual. But there's a little bit of, you can't always get what you want about this. But the thing is, I think we have to make a decision. And I think it would be the best thing we could do at the penultimate meeting of this council term to give this the tick. Every time I drive along St Asaph Street, when I take the kids to school at Aotawhiri, I look at High Street with that bit that's still not repaired all this time after the quakes, and I think, when is it going to be done? So let's give it the tick and let's just get on with it.
Aaron?
I was just going to say the irony of a document called the Central City Recovery Plan, but beyond that, the bit I raised earlier around the parking meters and the parking spots being removed, as traffic and parking gets smarter, what every parking spot will become in the very near future is priced on demand. And you can imagine, with being here within a block, a really short walk of the stadium, all on-street parks on a Saturday night or a Wednesday night when there's an Adele concert on or something like that. Well, it'll be several nights should be there, but when those things are on, those car parks are going to be worth $30 for the evening. Because we'll be able to price them for that. We will own that real estate, and we have to be smart about that and not just give it away too quickly. So that's just something I wanted to raise. That sort of stuff is coming, so be careful what you get rid of in advance of slightly smarter parking systems.
Mike and Tim.
Thank you. Just quickly on Yanni's point about the funding, obviously this still will have to get NZTA funding, so there's still a process and they'll have to go through there. So we're just approving it at the moment, and then that will happen. Look, obviously I was on the hearings panel. There are a few things that concern me. And look, we all appreciate, the great work that the developers do. And this street, High Street, it's designated as a streets for people in the Christchurch Central Recovery Plan. It was very clearly shown in that plan that those streets don't have car parks. And look, that's fine. It's a street that's meant to work for everyone, businesses and people using it, and they'll be on feed, on bikes and cars. And look, car parks were included, and that's fine because we're trying to actually help everybody out. But it just concerns me slightly when we start listening to just one person after a hearing panel's made a decision. I think we need to remember that, yes, developers are extremely important, but actually the biggest investors in the city are the people. And it was very clearly told to us at Share an Idea that we wanted a people-friendly city, a city where people can walk and bike safely. And what happens on High Street is actually you've got much wider footpaths, an area for people to spill out of the businesses and be able to engage on the footpaths in a safe manner. So we just got to be a little bit careful we don't move away from that too much. And it's very clear when you look at actually the amount of on-street and off-street car parking around High Street, there's tons of it. 213 on-street car parking within 200 metres of the middle section of High Street and 560 off-street car parks. That's a lot of car parks. So actually we need to stop saying parking's not as difficult. There's not much parking. There is a lot of car parking in the central city. There's more car parking now, publicly available car parking now, than there was pre-earthquake. So we need to start celebrating the good things that are happening in Christchurch. And one of the good things also about this street is it's actually got the ability to change over time. So therefore, when we get more people using it, and not relying on cars, we can actually just easily remove some of those car parks. And also the intersection of Churm and High Street will finally see the removal of a lot of those signals, which I think everyone will be pleased to do. Will be pleased to see. One of the things I can't say yes to when I asked put separately as number 2. Actually, staff did a huge amount of engagement on this, and I think going back, it's just a waste of money. So I'd just ask for 2 to be put separately. Thanks.
Thank you. Tim?
Thank you. Let's not let perfection get in the way of progress. You know, if we're talking about people friendly, you know, even though St Esther Street has a cycle lane and that's great, I would argue that High Street and these plans are a lot more people friendly than St Esther Street, which I think when you walk or drive down there or walk down there isn't really people friendly at all. So I think High Street's a good compromise where we are. I think it's always a compromised life. The Central City plan was someone else's plan, and then we've all adopted it and we've just got to live with it. But I do think this is a really good compromise. Life is full of compromise, and I don't, you know, we've got to appreciate the developers. They're the ones that take a huge risk, and if it weren't taking a risk here, the least of our problems would be this design. The biggest problem would be no one wants to come to Central City because nothing's happening. So I'm really for this. I think we've got to move forward. As I said, let's not perfection get in the way of progress. And I do want to thank staff for the outstanding negotiation and continued discussions that you've had. So cheers for that.
Thank you. David, would you like to close up the debate?
Thank you. As we've noted, this was a split decision, a majority decision. It's also quite significant to note that there are actually 2 quite distinct parts to this resolution today. One was the extension of the tram, which was a principal activity that was required, and 81% or more of the submitters actually supported that. So there's never been any argument at all about the extension of the tram, which in itself is going to provide sort of huge impetus to the success of that area of the town. The street revitalisation was the second part of the hearing, and really parking is one of the key things that keeps coming up at this stage in our iteration of the city that is a deterrent to people coming into the inner city. So we had the northern block where there's been no changes even requested to the hearings panel report, and that's quite straightforward. The middle block, you see that one small recommendation from staff to do a minor tweak on parking. And then we have the lower block. It's significantly away from the what I would call the core area of the city. And I think we really have to recognise the huge investment and commitment of a number of developers in this part of the town, the amount of money that they are injecting into High Street for a number of buildings. And I think we need to give them some reasonable recognition of their efforts in the town. Look, we can create a revitalisation plan, and some of these plans, and I look at the one that's we've approved for New Brighton and Marine Parade, it is designated as a flat surface, and parking is still in it, but we can convert that to a no parking area exceedingly quickly. And I think parts of High Street can be done the same without huge expense going forward. So in the short term, let's try and have this sort of compromise between parking and an open space or people space. I'm very comfortable with what we've come up with today. I think it is a compromise. When you look at the submitters, they were reasonably evenly split. 23 wanted less, 25 wanted more. So I think the compromise that we've come to today, there is a reduction in parking. there can be further reductions going forward if we need to, but I think we've settled on a plan. The timing also, I think, you know, there's little likelihood that any commencement of works would even eventuate within the next 12 months. We don't have the funding on stream at the moment. We've still got the negotiations to go through with NZTA. So I think all around we've got a bit of time up our sleeves to get some consideration from NZTA, and in the meantime we are signalling to that community that we have a plan in place that I think will have general acceptance. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll put the resolution. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Okay, so can you note number 2 was a no from Mike Davidson and no from Yanni Johansson for the resolution? Thank you.